Okay, welcome back, everybody, for our second day of presentations of the Fall Conference of the Hypnosis Education Association. And the theme is shifting the paradigm of hypnosis. Boy, I think we did a little shifting yesterday for sure.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Don't you think? By the way, those of you who missed our big awards party / banquet last night, boy, did you miss out. Lobster tail and filet mignon and champagne, and wow, you really missed it. It was great, wasn't it, everybody? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was imagining having anyway. I don't know what the rest of you.
I still have some leftovers.
Do you really? Ooh, something for lunch today. There you go.
Yeah, lobster casserole. Yeah.
Lobster casserole. Now I'm getting hungry. Okay, so here we are, and we're getting ready for a wonderful second day of presentations. First, we have a little bit of business to take care of here. As far as announcements, the only announcement I can think of right now is that we're going to be preparing for the next conference next year, which will probably take place sometime. We're anticipating maybe the third would be actually the fourth Saturday in April of next year in Oldsmar, Florida, a one-day conference. So keep watch out. That's not a hard and fast date yet, but we're going to shoot for around then, 22nd probably of April. And also, I was thinking it's a good idea to do announcements about up and coming opportunities that people have that are part of this group. So I know, Michael, you might have something coming up.
Well, yeah, it's really kind of last minute, but for people who've been certified for a couple of years and stuff, the master trainer training for IACT is coming up on starting on Wednesday, and it's 5 days: Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it is online 10 to 5. And in order to get into that, you need to give a call to the folks at the IACT right away, and you actually need to be a member of IACT. So I'm not sure how many people here are affected by that, but yeah. So that's the biggest thing on my calendar. And shortly thereafter, probably early in the year, I'm going to be doing an NLP practitioner training. So for people who have interest in that, please let me know so we can put together a group and get things going. I've got a couple of folks on there already I know that are excited about it, and I sure am too.
Great. Practitioner training. I think I've taken your practitioner training about 15 times now. We'll see.
Pass it eventually.
I used to bring him to Palm Harbor to teach it, so every time he taught it, I got to go through it again, and each time it just got better and better and better and better.
Those were great times, and you contributed a lot to that class.
That's pretty cool stuff. I call Michael my NLP guru, and we'll get to hear him talk later. I have a free webinar I do once a month. Actually, it's usually the third Wednesday of the month, but there was something else this coming Wednesday that Michael got me involved with. So, so I'm doing it this coming Tuesday, and it's November, so it's going to be on the power of gratitude, and it's free. It's 7:30 to 8:30, so quickie, 1 hour. Yeah, quickie really is kind of the theme, isn't it? For art said. So lots of quickies this weekend. So if anybody's interested in that, it's uphypnosis.com. It's, like I said, it's free. It's just a 1 hour for anybody who wants to come. Sometimes we do processes. Usually for gratitude, I'll do a process, but some of them are just discussions and interesting stuff. So lots of good stuff you can get on, nowadays online.
Yeah.
And there's lots of free and very inexpensive ongoing training, and you can get CEUs for anything Michael or myself does. Anybody else have anything coming up?
I got one more. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt somebody. I've got one more that I didn't mention, and I ought to. Every month, second Tuesday night of every month is the virtual chapter. It's sort of a carryover of something that I started doing 20 some years ago, almost 30 years ago in San Francisco, and it's eventually evolved to this online second Tuesday of the month. It's 8:30 until 10 o'clock East Coast time. And we always have my friend Karen Hand is my co-host, and she's a former radio DJ from WLS in Chicago. And she's a great addition to the thing as well. But between the two of us, we know so many people that we managed to get really great guests every month. The December one is going to be a little unusual because, as I mentioned, it's our Christmas It's our Christmas party, and what we're going to do, instead of having one primary presenter, is we're going to have probably about 9 or 10 people to do quiche.
Okay.
There you go. Quiche.
Yeah, so that will be really
Fancy
exciting.
word for quickie, right?
Yeah,
For those who weren't here earlier.
There's a Facebook group called Virtual Chapter. If you join or check out there, you'll be able to see who the speakers are going to be in advance, and then replays are also posted there if you can't make it for the live event.
Yeah, and that's one of the announcements I was hoping you'd bring up, because, again, Facebook page, that's where you can find, like Michael said, the virtual chapter. And please go to our Facebook page for this group, the Hypnosis Education Association on Facebook. And since we don't have the ability to give you feedback forms to fill out this time, you can send feedback to any of us, to myself or any of us that are part of the group. And also please go on the Facebook page and let them know, your thoughts and your feedback and how much you enjoyed, hopefully, this wonderful gathering. So we need to move on, because we've got elections to finish up on today, because, these are people that the membership elects the board. And hopefully I will do this accurately. It's pretty simple this year. There are two board members that are up for election right now, and that was the treasurer and the treasurer and the, what was it? Vice president. How could I forget? That's right. So for 2-year terms, and the treasurer, we had a nomination of Susan Watson, who has agreed to keep doing that for another couple of years. And if there's anyone else interested, speak now or forever, you know what. And we've already taken nominees yesterday morning, so no one else wants to jump in the pool. So let's go ahead and have a vote. Is that correct? Jan's our bylaws person, so she keeps me on track with how to run this. So by a show of hands, anyone agree to have Susan Watson be our wonderful treasurer for another 2 years?
Hey.
Maybe more, Susan, you never know.
Hey.
Okay, anybody opposed? Put your hands down if you go. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Susan, congratulations.
Thank you. It's an honor. It's an honor.
You have been nominated and voted in. Now, I don't know if I was supposed to start with this, but vice president is a very important position. Michael Watson will be finished with that at the end of this year. And we have a wonderful nominee that has graciously agreed as of this weekend, and that is Art Emmerich. So if anyone else is interested in being our vice president, speak now again, or we haven't heard from anyone else. So all those who agree to have Art Emmerich be our vice president for the next 2 years. Very nice. Looks like unanimous to me. Congratulations, Art.
Hey, thank you.
And like I said, he
also.
didn't know that he was going to even be asked. So we can't say that this was a bribe, but we have to tell you, if you weren't there last night, that the achievement award at the banquet last night went to Art Emmerich, well deserved. So he received the achievement award from the HEA. The President's Award, which is one that I, as president, get to choose someone who's, gone over, above and beyond for a long time in this group, went to Jan Risden, well deserved. Absolutely.
Yay.
And we also gave this year, we don't do all of these every year, by the way, it's just special, the Lifetime Membership Award, which has gone to a few people you can see on our website. This year, we gave the Lifetime Membership Award to someone who's been in the group a long time and contributed a lot, Susan Watson. So there you go. These people put a lot of time and energy and effort for many, many years in this group. So, these are well-deserved. And we gave, I came up with a one-time only award that we gave to Michael Watson. And it was a beautiful little heart-shaped crystal type of an award. I don't think it's real crystal, Michael. Sorry, when you see it, it's probably plexiglass or something. I don't know, but it's beautiful. It's a heart. And it's to thank Michael Watson for over 2 decades of being the heart and soul of this group. And that just was a one-time only, because he has been the heart and soul And we're going to keep that heart and soul forever going in your honor and to carry on your legacy. So, okay. I think that's all the announcements. Yes. Did I forget anything? No, I don't think so. So we got a beautiful lineup today, and make sure to look at the clock that's actually working. It is time for us. Is she here? Uh-oh, where is she?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. I was getting worried there. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. Oh, that's because I had the wrong introduction in front of me. That's why. I'm glad you said something. I almost introduced someone that wasn't you. That would have been interesting. It's the confusion technique. I like it's one of my favorite things, by the way. Confusion. The surprise technique and the confusion technique. Okay, I'm excited about this. Okay, this next presenter is going to be presenting Breaking the Trance of Grief. And this is Jessica Hanson, another, by the way, master trainer for IACT. And she's often described as an old soul. I love that. Because of her many experiences, she learned hypnosis at the age of 13 and has used it to recover from depression, NDE, I'm not even sure what that is, so maybe you can tell us, grief, and much, much more. Jessica is the co-author of the new IACT Trainer's Manual, and she is owner of a state-licensed hypnosis school. I think she said she's the first one in that state or in the area. She can tell you about that. She's the author of 3 books and the creator of the Turtle Transformation Process. Ooh, I like the sound of that. Her love of turtles is contagious. Her passion is helping people transform. So everybody, welcome Jessica Hanson, all the way from Minnesota.
Yay.
Thank you, guys. Patty, you can send me a message in the message thing when my time's up, because I can
I'll
only
send you one when at the 5-minute mark too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can only see a few of you, so I'm on my phone.
Okay.
So you guys can save on notes. Most of what I'm going to say will be in your handout, and it will be a PDF, and it'll look like this. This is me and my first husband at the funeral and my turtle. So you'll get that. So most of the notes are in there, so it'll save you from taking some notes. So just to go back a little bit on what Patty was saying, NDE is near-death experience. I had one, oh gosh, 15 some plus years ago now. I came back completely, I couldn't see, hear, talk, move, anything, and remembered my hypnosis skills and got myself back to pretty much normal, as you can see. You'd hardly ever know. But anyways, that's not why we're here today. I'm here to talk about breaking the trance of grief. And I'm going to start off with a little humor before I get into the background and everything else. So do you know what happens to all the penguins in Antarctica that die? There just aren't any dead penguins laying around on the ice. You know, there's so many, you'd think there would be some laying somewhere. Well, some scientists have been researching this for years and years, and they finally found the answer. They were watching, and one day one of the old penguins passed away. And some of the other members of its group or its family kind of gathered around, and they nudged it and pushed it away from the group. And then they began pecking a hole in the ice with their beaks. They bent over and began pecking and pecking and pecking. And they made this nice hole in the ice. And then they were watching, the scientists were watching from kind of behind some ice blocks to see what was going to happen next. And these little penguins, they got their little beaks out and they pushed their little deceased penguin into the little hole. And then they began covering him up. And then a whole bunch of them gathered around the edges. They began to sing. For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which nobody can de-ice. And that's where all our little dead penguins go. So now that I've shocked you into a trance of grief for our little penguin friends, I like to say that grief is an instant induction, or more of a shock induction, like Patty was just saying, into a trance that is really difficult to come out of. And you'll see more about this as we go along. But this trance is really just a protective mechanism so that we don't have to face the reality. It's a buffer zone. And as we all know, as hypnotists or those of us learning yet, hypnosis or trance, sometimes we get in those beautiful places and we don't want to come back. Do I have to open my eyes? Do I want to? And grief is really one of those weird trances that we get into because it's gone, it's over. If we open our eyes, then it's real. And we don't want it to be real. And we can stay there for several years. Some people stay there for 20, 30 years and never come out of it, which is unfortunate. But so a little background, grief led me to hypnosis, oddly enough, at the age of 13. And hypnosis helped me emerge from the trance of grief. At the age of 13, we had a freak accident in our family. A cousin who was the same age as me passed away. And due to some precognitive dream things that I had happened before it, I blamed myself for his death, for not saving him. And literally the school was going to have me removed. And they said, there's something wrong with you. You need to be committed. So my dad met this wonderful lady, psychologist, who also knew hypnosis. She did all the testing and there's nothing wrong with you. You're just a child. An unfortunate thing happened. No one knows how to deal with this, much less, a child. Let me teach you how to help yourself. And she proceeded every time we met to teach me hypnosis. She said, I'm going to teach you hypnosis from the ground up. You are going to fix yourself. There's nothing I'm going to do to you. So that was one of my early mentors, amazing woman named Ruth. And then again, fast forward to about 10 years ago now, my first husband passed away. And I was with him, but I got to experience grief on a whole new level from an intimate partner passing away. And that was very interesting to me because you're given all of the information from hospice and everything that's going to happen. From the Christian standpoint, they tell you everything that's going to happen, what to expect. And from the counseling standpoint, you get everything. But until you actually live it and go through it, you really have no concept. It's just words on a paper. And that's what's become my passion, is to help people understand it beyond the words. So grief, I like to say as well, it's a focused attention or a fixation. It can become on the loss because it's no longer there. And we try to fill that void for a long time. And grief is really like a self-hypnosis response. If I stay in this imaginary world of where they're still here, then I don't have to face the reality of the loss. And it works for several years. So I like to reframe it and find a way to work with it. Like, it's no longer here, it's gone. How can we get you to move forward? But this does not happen immediately. However, I like to, when I have people come into my office, if it's been longer than 2 years, then I'm very comfortable working with grief. If it's been under 2 years or it's really fresh, I don't work with them because I don't want to interfere with the natural process. I think our bodies are naturally wired to go into grief for that protective mechanism. We need it as we begin to, I like to use the word unwind from those memories, because as we know, our memories are stored everywhere in our myofascial tissue, all over our body, like even your little toe has memories of this stuff. And it takes time. The longer you've been with this person or around them, it takes a lot more time to unwind from that. And I don't like to disrupt that process, but I can support them if it's early on in the grief process. For me, I was fine for 2 years. The first 2 years, 2.5, I was completely fine. After that is when things really started to happen. So just really quickly, for me personally, I went through the worst grief has to offer. I went through the complicated part of grief to the point of PTSD. So I would hear a helicopter or see an ambulance and just become this helpless ball of human. It just, I was completely paralyzed, couldn't function. Grief led me to the point of, I didn't know who I was. So what happened for me is one day when I was coming out of all of this, I went to work. It felt fake, like a movie set. So I was really dissociated from myself at that point. I walked back out, got in my vehicle. I drove back to the church and I sat on the curb and I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what day it was, what time it was, why I was there. Even my body felt fake at that moment. I found something within me to drive back home. I went home and that evening, I have this weird thing where I remember everything that happened so I can relate it to people and like, no, this really happens. You're not crazy. At this point as well, I had kind of stopped eating and drinking due to my first husband had a stroke. So I think somewhere inside my brain, I was empathizing with him. And through the not eating and drinking water, or not eating food, drinking water, having nutrition, my brain started to go into those brain states that trigger athletes that do a lot of running, your marathon runners, they can have this where your brain actually dehydrates and you start to get the schizophrenic symptoms. So I began to hear things, see things, experience things that weren't there. And nobody knew this was going on to the point where I completely lost my identity of who I was. I walked around the house. I didn't recognize myself in a mirror. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know who I was. I was afraid of the telephone. The phone rang and it put me into another PTSD panic. And it's only really by grace that a friend of mine came out because I didn't show up to work. And they called my family and said, there's something wrong with Jessica. You need to come down here and help. So that was kind of the beginning of my immersion into grief, my shock induction. And that happened, 2.5 years after the funeral. So I always like to ask clients, where are you at? How's it going? If I know that someone has recently passed away. And if I feel like I'm jumping all over, I am a little bit because I've gotten to do this presentation twice actually. And the 2 times I've done, we've had so many problems with the recording and different stuff happening in the background. I was just like, oh, this is fun. So if I break your camera, Patty, I'm sorry. But anyways, so that's my experience. I went through the worst of it. And really by grace, I came out the other side pretty well. Once I started getting food and water back in my system and some nutrition, I came out of it really well, pretty fast. It didn't last very long. The effects went away. But still from time to time, our bodies, as we unwind, and I love that word, unwinding from these memories and these emotions that we carry, we'll go through different things. So I'll have, for instance, I'll have clients come in with this pain that they just can't get rid of. And the doctor has said, oh, it's nothing physical with you. So I'll just start asking in my intake for every single client. I ask, has anyone passed away in the last 3 to 10 years? I go back 10 years, sometimes a little further, depending on when their issue started. And they'll say, oh yeah, so-and-so. And usually it's a couple deaths, not just one. And then I'll ask them, so you're telling me you have this issue, were they a pain in the ass to you, or were they, did they cause you some trouble? And usually I find out right away when I bring that up and I say, oh, so Uncle Bob passed away and he was a really fun uncle, blah, blah, blah. And that they haven't dealt with the grief when the tears are right there, or you see them trying to hold those tears back. And then I tell them, well, we need to do some grief work. And it's fun because the way I do it, I tell them, I'm not going to make you cry any more than you just have. We're going to help you resolve this and put it away so that it's more of a happy memory, like looking through a photo album and you can say, oh, I remember that. I remember that was so much fun. And, you know, so-and-so was there and it was this beautiful day. So to make it more of the good, positive memory. So when they think of Uncle Bob, it doesn't bring the tears and it can just be more positive. So that is my goal with my clients. And like I say, if it's a fresh grief response, and I don't really touch it for a while if it's under those 2 years, because they need to go through the normal process that's hardwired in them. But if it's longer than 2 years, it's okay as far as I'm concerned to help them. And one thing I think I want every person who's a hypnotist or, you know, just massage therapist, anyone out there in the health and healing industry to know is that you're already working with grief. I meet so many people who say, well, I can't work with grief. I don't understand it. I've never lost someone really close. I'm like, yes, you have. And you're probably working with grief every single client you're with. You just don't know it. And I know it was alluded to yesterday and the recent virtual chapter. If you guys have a pen handy, write down virtual chapter or VC 11/22, Lisa Sigsworth. You need to write that one down. She did an amazing presentation. I almost felt secretly jealous. Like, why do you guys need me? You have her. But watch that one. Excellent presentation. So grief is not always about loss of a person. It's loss of a pet. It could be loss of a job. It could be from your recent hurricane that you guys had in Florida. People lose their house. It's amazing. They don't really know what grief is. And in America, it seems like, but if you research all over the world, they get it. So the other areas I find grief, and I worked with grief, are retirement. Not usually right away when someone retires. I've worked with a small handful of people who are nearing retirement, and they're terrified of retirement. They're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I tell, well, it's a grief response. It's a losing of an identity of who you've been for so many years. And so for that, you guys have all done this. You future pace. You go, how can we help you transition from this identity of you working to this identity over here of you retired? What does your identity over here look like? Let's start to create that for you so it's comfortable and you can just transition beautifully into that. So that's really fun work. And again, that's grief. Pets, I know pets were brought up. You lose a pet, you're gonna cry. They're close to you. They're cute, they're cuddly, they're there for you. They get into our hearts and souls and minds, and it takes a little time to disconnect from that. Grief also, I know, is people don't realize, but a lot of the stuff you're dealing with your clients before the age of 7, when a lot of our weird things happen to us and, you know, it's coming out weird in adult life, those are grief responses. So the child who had the toy taken away, or the child that was told no and sat in the corner and couldn't go to the birthday party. That's a grief response, but they only understood it on that 3-year-old, 4-year-old level. Mm-hmm. And some people never move past that. So realize when your client comes in with a certain issue and you regress and you go back to the ISE and it's, you know, all of a sudden they're 4 and they're sitting in the corner and, you know, well, I can't go to whatever it is. I can't go to the birthday, or just got my toy taken away. That is a grief response from a child's point of view. And to have adult them come back and give them some resources. Because usually the parent never had resources to give that child. They never moved past that. And really for me, I can say that's where my grief response comes from a very, very young age. Because I've done like regression on how, so I can handle grief better in the future. And one of my very first memories of grief is being like 3 years old, and it was January and we were burying my great-great-grandmother, or not great-great, my great-grandmother. But it was snowing and blowing, and they left me in the vehicle. And I remember sitting there, why are they leaving people out in the cold? That was my experience and my memory, and that has stuck with me. Even to the point, since I'm here, I'll talk about this now. Even to the point where one day in my home, I had plaster walls in the home I was living in. And you know, plaster walls are cold. And part of my grief response at that time was I was touching the wall, and I was talking to one of my other mentors on the phone, and I was frozen at the top of my steps. I couldn't move my body physically. And he said, well, tell me what's going on. What are you touching? And I said, well, I'm touching so I'm holding the railing. He said, well, touch something else. And so I reached out and I touched the wall, and it was really cold, icy cold feeling. And again, it was instant regression. He's like, so what's going on? I said, well, what does it feel like? I said, it feels like death. It's that cold, icy feel of death. And he talked me through that for a little bit and got me to sit down so I wouldn't fall down my steps. And just in a matter of 10 minutes or less, I came back out of that, and I was able to realize it was just a wall. I was sitting on the steps, and to get me back into my body, I realized, no, this is a grief response. I'm letting go. Because I don't know how many of our clients, or if you yourself have ever, like when they do like a casket reveal, if you've ever touched the body, they're very cold. If you've never done it, they're very cold, they're very waxy. So, you know, we talk about our catalepsy and modeling of our client. Dead bodies are very much the same. And sorry if it's a little graphic for you guys, but I tell people if I wouldn't have been a hypnotist, I probably would have been a mortician if I could do the math, all the other sciencey stuff, because it's fascinating what our bodies do. And I don't know, it just fascinates me to no end. I have some really cool friends in the mortuary industry. But they're very, so the same things we do with our clients, honestly, the same things that, you know, dead bodies do. So I'm very careful as well with my clients. With grief, I never, ever, ever do the eye stick shut thing. I don't even use it in my office for myself because it reminds me of death. So I don't do the eye catalepsy test with clients, especially if I know it's a grief issue, because again, it can trigger that grief response. And I've seen it one time where somebody did the eye catalepsy and the person had a reaction to it. So just be aware of that. If you're ever doing the stick your eyes shut so you're convinced you can't open them, and your client bursts into tears or has a panic attack suddenly, it could be because of something with grief, or they've been around someone who passed away. So that's my precaution with that one with your grief clients. Yeah, it's these weird things stick with us. They jump out, they remind us. So I'm talking about the memories being stored all over the body. The longer you're with someone that you care about, and I know I'm gravitating this more toward like physical loss of a person, but realize this transfers to job ending, losing a house in a fire, a tornado, a storm, having your car stolen or something could be a grief response if you really like that vehicle. So it transfers pretty much across everything. And I'll get into that in a little bit into why. But so I want to go back and touch on the memories. And there is a technique called havening. It was done at one of the conferences a few years back. I love, yes, I love this. You can do the face and the arms and the whole body. Because under our skin, we have a layer of tissue, and it's called the myofascial tissue. It's kind of what your massage therapist works on. It's also really deeply connected to, oh, come on, brain. It's early for me. Really deeply connected to the vagus nerve in our body, because so the vagus nerve wraps around like every organ in your body. So does myofascial tissue. I think the two are actually kind of one and the same in the body to some extent. And really it's the superhighway for memories, feelings, emotions, sight, taste, smell, everything that we experience. So every experience that we have with this person is stored in a different place in our body, energetically, if you want to call it that, or in little micro spots. Like I said, you could have a spot in your little toe that reminds you of the last time you had a meal with this person. And maybe in your elbow is the point where, oh, we went on that really fun trip together. And, you know, if it's an intimate person, maybe it's on one of your shoulders or your chest or some little more intimate place of your body where you hold memories of being intimate with them. Or like maybe your lips or your face holds, you know, the kissing, the cuddling kind of memories. And so it takes time for those to change and transform in our bodies, because we're not getting that touch, that feel anymore. It's all of a sudden cut off. It's kind of like when you have the baby and you stop picking it up and coddling it every time it cries, and you let it get it out of its system and learn how to self-soothe. Grief almost puts us back into that infantile state of having to learn to self-soothe, because we're going through all these experiences where memories keep percolating up to the surface, like those little bubbles in like wine or, you know, other little beverages that have bubbles. Our memories keep percolating up as we clear things out. And one of the best ways to do this for yourself or for your client is simply to touch and do the havening. Again, if you want to learn more of that, just havening.org. It'll be in your little handout reminder in here as well. But it's simply just touching like the face and the arms like this. There are some older clients who, if they've lost a loved one and I'm dealing with grief, I will actually do this for them after you get your permission to touch. And I show them on me first. This is what I'm going to do. And I generally don't do the face, but I'll do the arms for my client. And I'll have them sitting in my chair. We put them into trance and I just let them remember. I say, whatever comes up, no problem. You don't have to tell me what it is, but this touch can be so soothing. Like you can actually watch their face, just their whole face changes. And because you can literally watch that grief just changing in their body. Otherwise it just sits there stagnant. And you know how like you get a bruise, and if you don't get blood flow moving to that area, that blood becomes stagnant and you get this really nasty bruise and it can turn into other stuff. Our emotions do that inside of us. Grief can do that to us. It can turn into this nasty, oozy thing in our body that we need to move out. So I know, like I said, I apologize. I'm going kind of everywhere this morning. But there's so much with grief and our responses. I know sometimes I was going to say, I'm going to give you guys a list of techniques, but I want to find this one statistic because I found it and it was absolutely amazing. Okay, so all grief, no matter if it's, you know, personal loss or if it's job, whatever, any grief at all, we feel it differently, but it's all processed in the same area of the brain. And if you want that information, again, in your booklet, there's a lady named Barbara Carnes, Karnes. She's a registered nurse. She did a webinar and she has a book about the brain and grief. But if you can't find the interview, then send me an email and I will give you the link to it. She did an amazing talk on what grief does to the brain and how the brain processes it. And she's talking very much about these same things. It's stored all over. It's all in the same area of our brain, no matter if it's, you know, you lose a pet, you lose your job, you lose your car, you lose your kid, your best friend, your spouse. It's all processed in the same area of the brain, just to different degrees. So to me, that is absolutely fascinating. But so if you want that information, you can email me and you'll get that. Again, some of this is just how much do you want to learn? go out there and learn it. Obviously, because I've been through it several times and like to the extreme and back, I'm passionate about sharing what happened to me and how hypnosis can get me out of that. So I think probably what I want to talk about next then is some techniques for you guys, because that was something I didn't get to do before in one of my talks. So I think techniques are important because I want you guys to be able to do this when a client comes in, to help them, because that's why they're there, to get your help. And we're usually safe people to come to because we're not diagnosing or prescribing. We're not going to, here, take this pill, call me in a week kind of thing. We're going to say, no, let me help you learn how to help yourself. And I'm going to be here as a coach to support you along the way. So, and like I said, you guys are already doing this. And once I start to tell you some of these, you're going to be like, oh, duh, I can do this. So you're only using these techniques, again, usually after 2 years. If it's under the 2-year mark, it's just a matter of supporting those memories. Talking to them maybe about how memories are stored in the body, letting them just sit in your office and cry, because some people don't have a safe place to cry and just to feel what they're feeling. Some people don't have a safe place to be angry or yell. So one of the things is just create that space for your client, let them do what they need to do. In the point of yelling, one of the best things a pastor ever did for me was, he said, come here a second. We walked out of the office, we walked into the church, main church part, and we sat down, we left the lights off, and all of a sudden he started yelling. This empty church. And he said, okay, now it's your turn. And we yelled for a half an hour in this empty church, and only the janitor heard us because he was going around, in the back, we could hear him. But he's like, don't worry about who's listening or not. He's like, just yell. And so we yelled in the dark for a half hour in this church. And he goes, this is what one of my mentors did for me. And he goes, it's one of the most therapeutic, healing things I could ever do. He goes, it's okay to be mad at God. God can take it. So let your client yell. Sometimes they need that space. So some techniques, and again, this will be in your handout. I call it empty chair, empty bench. After you set up a very peaceful place for your client, usually in your first session, hopefully your first session, probably in the second session, put an empty chair, whether a physical one in your office or imaginary. See what your client is capable of. If they're very visual, have them imagine an empty chair, and put this empty chair wherever they want it. So maybe you want it in a beautiful garden. Maybe you want it on the beach. Maybe you just want it on like a walkway, like by the ocean, one of those, walkways with benches along it. Just put a random bench in a beautiful place. I usually let them choose. And then I let them sit on this bench and we watch people walk by, and all of a sudden a person comes along and sits down next to them. And a lot of times at first they don't recognize them. Because if you study the death realm very much, you'll quickly learn that often people who've passed never present in the same way that we remember them. They're always at a younger age. So sometimes your client won't remember them right away, which is completely fine. But usually then they do. I let them have a conversation, whether out loud or in their head. And we just do this exchange back and forth. Like, oh, I really miss you. It really hurts, blah, blah, blah. And oh, I'm so sorry you're hurting. We let this dialogue play out. A lot of times it's not very long, but it helps with that. It's almost like havening for the brain when you let this conversation go back and forth. So you're not physically touching like this. However, if you can get them to do this while you're doing the empty chair technique, it's just beautifully just moves things through the neurology in the body. Another thing I'll have them do, whether physically or in their mind, is again, writing down everything they want to say. And this works well in trance because they can have as big a piece of paper as they want. They can make it however they want. And no one else has to ever read these words but them. So I'll just have them in trance, I'll give them either a marker or an imaginary marker, and just let them write. Just so I want you to write everything that you've always wanted to say. And if it's screaming, just write scream on the paper, whatever you need to write. Kind of like we were talking about with the zap it, rolling your eyes up yesterday. You write your word up here. Same thing. I let them write all the words they want on their piece of paper. And then we decide what to do with it. Because again, like was said yesterday, it's not okay to release balloons really anymore. But if they want to put it on a balloon, and if it's meaningful for them, then we attach that to the most beautiful balloon of their choice. And we watch it release. We watch it go up, up, up into the heavens, wherever it needs to go for them. Other people, they'll choose to bury it, and they'll plant a seed or a tree on top. And then we future pace that and watch that tree grow and that flower grow. And of course, that's a signal to the unconscious mind that we are going to move past this. It's going to turn into something bigger and beautiful, more beautiful than it feels right now. The seed has to be in the dark for a while and then begin to emerge. Another thing we'll do is, some people, especially up here in the north, we really love our campfires. So I'll just have them, you're at wherever you normally would go camping with your loved one, or wherever your campfire is, and we just burn those papers one by one in the mind. Again, these are techniques you guys are already doing to some degree or another, and it works so beautifully with grief, because those words are gone, the smoke goes up, or maybe your loved one is there and they see you getting that relief, and you feel so much better because it's happening. Another one that I love to do is, I've heard it called point and click, but it's basically, where do you feel it in your body? You've all done this with an emotion. Where do you feel it? Well, it's here. I'm carrying this chip on my shoulder. Okay, so let's take it off the shoulder. I usually ask them, I regret this so much. I regret, well, where do you feel the regret? Well, it's right here. It's really heavy. And so we'll have them take it off of themselves. And I make them move, because if we do this, again, we're touching the body, we're moving the myofascial tissue, we're engaging the vagus nerve, we're doing so much. Get it off of them. Sometimes I will have them imagine a table out in front of them in the room. And on the other side of that table is a chair, and in that chair is their loved one. And I just have them do this and unpack their entire body of the grief and emotion, wherever you feel anything, positive and non-positive. I let them unpack their body like this and put it all on that table. And then we look at the loved one and we say, thank you so much for all these memories. But I don't need them anymore. And I leave the I don't need them anymore, because it's usually the thing that breaks the ice for that person. It breaks that connection to, I can't move past this, and how can I let go? There's freedom in saying those words of thank you, but I don't need this anymore. And then we imagine closing a curtain to that, or the person, we let that room fade away, that table, that other person, and it changes something in you, because you're no longer carrying those things. You put it all on the table. It's like, for lack of a better word, it's all on the table. The loved one, I don't know, do they know? Probably. I mean, there's a whole nother realm out there we can't see, for the most part, we're not aware of. They probably know, but it's really freeing for that person. So this, with the table and the person on the other side, it usually works really well for divorce, people that have been divorced. Divorce is a grief in itself. The only difference, it's a loss, but the only difference is that person's still living, where someone, who's had a love, they're dead, all they have is a stone. But with someone with grief, with divorce, I've had several people like, I can't get rid of this person. They're dead to me, but I can't get rid of them because they keep showing up. The dead people usually don't show back up like real people do. So the table and chair usually works really well for someone who's been divorced. You can just put it all there, give it all to them, and walk away and feel different. I talked about the yelling. Provide a safe place. If you can't yell in your office, then find a place that is okay to yell. There is, I know up in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities metro area, they have what they call break rooms, where they take its dishes and cups, pots and pans, anything that you can destroy, and chairs. And they give you a variety of tools to pick from. So like saws, hammers, anything, sledgehammers, anything that you want. They give you goggles and hard hats and gloves. And you can just go in there and just smash and break and cut things up to let aggression out. They call them break rooms up here. I don't know what they are down there. But that would be an example of a place you could point your client to if they need to get, especially men, sometimes they need to get that aggression out in a good way. So point them in that direction, or provide them something to smash or break. We've all heard of the director technique. We know what that is. For the most part, I hope you guys do. That can be used for grief. A lot of times we just have those last things we wish we could say to that person. So dissociate them, let them be the director, and put someone who represents them or them up on the stage, and their loved one up on the stage, and all the props and everything, and let the scene play out until it feels like a more acceptable scene, something that's more easy to live with than what's really happening. And we're just reframing the grief for them. It's over, it's in the past, so we can change it. And that's one thing I always tell my clients is, you know what, so this is the part that really happened, but it's in your past, so we can change that. We can change that memory to whatever helps you live from day to day and make it better. So I said, and then let's create this new stage, this new set, these new lines for yourself. And some pretty cool things come out of that. And again, at the end of like a director technique sequence, I usually have them, their loved one again goes away. And at the end, it's just them standing on the stage. And after that, I usually, again, future pace, because they need someplace to go. You don't want to leave them stuck in that emptiness. So start future pacing. Like, what do you see? What is the next scene? If this play were to have a sequel and continue, what would it look like when the curtains reopen? Who's on the stage? What's happening to you? Get them to step into their future to some degree and experience that. Another beautiful one, I know Patty teaches this, is Dr. Michael Preston's library technique. Go into their library and find the book of the loved one. And find out, what do those pages look like? You know, when they open their book, is it like all of a sudden you're immersed back in that? If they are, then start to bring them out of that immersion and just begin to let it be pages or words on the page, black and white letters, beautiful pictures that aren't moving. Sometimes I ask, well, the picture is very real, three-dimensional color, vivid color. And so then we do that, you know, well, let's imagine we can change that color. Let's put it to sepia. Instead of black and white, I like sepia. So we use sepia. Sometimes we will maybe blur the image a little bit, depending how far back these images go. You know, I tell them, you know, maybe the edges are a little frayed, like some of those old photos. And it's amazing how that instantly takes them out of that memory. And it just becomes a more beautiful, easy to look at memory. There may be a couple happy tears that start. Oh, and while I'm thinking about it, I want to throw the tears in because this is amazing to watch. When you're working with grief, a lot of times it'll be the left eye that'll cry first, and they might not even notice because a lot of times it's the past. If it's a female, it'll always be on the left that they've lost. And you'll watch the tears come, and you know they've made the transition when all of a sudden you get like this single tear out of the other eye. It is the coolest thing to watch. it happened the other day in one of our demo students, someone I brought in from the outside, and my student was working with it and they were amazed. It was a thing with a sister. And the tears were over here, and all of a sudden we worked through, we actually did the director technique. We had them on stage. And as soon as we fired one of the actresses, the sister in the scene, the whole thing, the tears stopped. And when we reran it, there was just this one single tear out of the right eye. It was, the whole face changed. And I said, there's your cue, pointing out, here's your cue. You've reached the point of transition for this person, to make it better. And they're not going to go back to the way it was. It was really cool. So gauge the tears during the session as well. Sometimes your client doesn't even know they're having those little tears, but you can tell when it's moved, because usually it'll just be on the one side, and it's usually the right. And it just means they're transitioning forward, which is really cool to watch. Timeline, we've done this in various ways. You don't even have to look at the memories with timeline. If memories bring up emotion for your client, just go above a timeline and be like, so where are the dark spots? Where are the gray spots? And allow, like, some people like the little ball of energy. And I tell them, it's like your Roomba vacuum cleaner. It can just go along your timeline. It'll just suck up little things that you don't want. And we get it all the way to the back. We get the Roomba to clean that timeline off, or clean that room. And we allow it to dump out its garbage, all the stuff it picked up. And then the Roomba comes back and it just begins to drop little good things in those empty spaces as it goes along. And then it goes back. And that way you're not even talking about the memory. I don't need to know what the experience was, but we can do it in metaphor. Like, oh, that's a black. I'm going to let that Roomba suck up the black. And I've had people name their vacuum cleaners. I don't know, but it works for them, and they can let go of it in a metaphoric way. We don't have to dig it up like every other therapist out there is digging it up. So tell me about your week. How many times did you cry? Or how many times did you do this? We don't want to dig it back up for them. We want them to help starting to leave it where it is and to be okay with that. So metaphor is always a great way. I like the little Roomba vacuum cleaners. Future pacing is always good. If you don't know what else to do, just future pace. So what would it be like if you were to feel a little bit different than you feel now? Like, maybe you have to go back first and find a happy memory of them being happy that didn't revolve their loved one that they lost, or that didn't involve their pet, or whatever issue it was. Find a memory, bring that back and pull it into your future and say, so what would it look like? How would your body be standing? What would you be saying? What would you be doing, feeling this the same way? And start to find those positives from the past without that other person involved, usually just them feeling really good, and bring that across into their future and start to paint these possibilities for them. It's easy, fun work, again, kind of metaphoric. You're not really touching the issue yet, you are in really big ways. Another way, we talked about circle of excellence yesterday. Amazing for this. You're doing the same thing. You're putting everything you want, how you want to be, in that circle, and you step into it. So how would it, because some people can't imagine what it would feel like to not feel grief, to not feel terrible. You get so stuck in grief, literally, that you don't know how else you should feel. You don't remember what it was like to feel otherwise. So it's, sometimes you have to help feed them some words for a little bit, but literally put a circle on the floor, make one, a rug, and have them put everything that how it should be without grief, and then actually stand up out of their chair, step into it, and feel, what would this be like? Try to trigger some of that memory of what is it like to not feel this crappy? And it may take a couple times. Oh, that felt horrible. I don't like this. And then again, step out, sit down. So what would we change? How do you want to, let's try on some different things. And I just tell them, it's like when you go shopping for clothes, and let's just say, you have this new job. Literally you do. You have a new job after your loved one has passed away or your pet has passed. So let's go try on some new clothes. Let's find out who you are now. And I liken it to the clothing metaphor. Let's go to this, I don't know, Armani shop or some fancy shop, and let's try on some different clothes, and see how it feels for you. And if you don't like it, let's step back out of that circle. Let's put that thing back on the hanger because it's not you. Let's try on something else that is you until we find what fits, and then really step into that. And then I always like to future pace that once we find the thing that fits them the best. NLP, I know Art talked about this, excellent for grief, because we're just reframing. We're reframing the grief for them at its core. And as well, it works great for those things left unsaid. There's so many NLP techniques out there. Again, pulling that off of your body kind of thing, that's an NLP hypnosis crossover. Reframe, release. Anger is a good one. A lot of people are afraid to go to the anger piece of grief. They skirt around it with you. They don't want to go there. So again, that's where the yelling comes in. Or, so what does anger feel like in your body? Let's move this out. Let's reframe the anger to maybe it's a storm cloud coming. I don't know. And we can ride out the anger, and it's okay. You've ridden out many storms in your life. And on the other side of the storm, everything's always beautiful and bright and refreshed and can be made new. And then of course, with NLP as well, we can go back and reframe. I mean, you're already doing this work. You do it every single day in your office. And a lot of times, depending on your intake form, you may actually be working with something that's rooted in grief, a grief response from before the age of 7, or a death that their unconscious mind has put in a little safe container and put way back here because it's safe back there. And all of a sudden it comes out in this weird ache or pain that's in their body. And the doctor's like, there's nothing wrong with you. And they come to you and are like, I have this ache. It doesn't go away. It doesn't change. It could be grief. But again, you can ask, you can do your little, idiomotor response and say, is this something from the past, a grief response? You're probably going to get a yes at some level because we're really good at packing this away. I don't think I mentioned in the beginning, but so traditionally grief was used to be considered normal and healthy at 2 to 3 years. They've changed that, and I'm so glad. The new normal for grief, and this is something you can tell all your clients, the new normal for grief is actually 2 to 5 years. And so consider like 5 years is normal, healthy grief, which is amazing in itself. But until you've been through the process, you really understand that. Because again, the longer the relationship, the deeper the relationship is with that thing, the longer it takes to process that. Especially in America, in our society, we're expected to just be okay. It's like the funeral's over. You get maybe 5 days, maybe a week if you're lucky. And then people are like, pull your shit together, get back to life. And a lot of people do. I went back to work the day after the funeral and everybody's like, oh, you're so strong. You're so brave. You're so this, you're so that. And inside you're falling apart. You're just a mess. You're a wreck. But this is where that trance of grief keeps that front so that nobody sees what's going on in the back. There's complete chaos going on back here, but you can keep that front. I mean, Patty gets it. She's been in the entertainment industry. You turn it on and there you are all day. And some people never turn that off. Helpful things. If you have a client who comes in and it's grief and it's new and fresh, offer them a warm beverage and just let them talk. You don't have to do a session. It's open-eyed trance. It's conversational hypnosis. They're already in trance. Just let them talk because no one's asking them about their loved one and what they remember, and just let them talk. And ask, sometimes you don't have to say anything to them, but ask, make sure they're eating, make sure they're drinking water. There's so much that people don't think of the simple things. And the really sad thing is, and this is why I say, if you have a client who comes in and you suspect it's a fresher grief thing, just let them talk. It's really common for moms who've lost children to just be put in the psych ward. I hear it more and more up here. There's, especially if they're like a little older than, a newborn, like age 1, 2, 3. I know some people who immediately after their child has passed, they were put in a psych ward. And a lot of them were not allowed to go to the funeral,
Oh my God.
which is really sick and sad in itself. So understand that these things are happening. So that's why I say, if you have someone who comes in with, and you suspect it's grief, just let them unwind, let them unpack. You may have to do what feels like a traditional cognitive behavioral session, but we can vent, right? We vented to each other about different things at different times in our lives. So let your client vent. They need that, especially if they were locked up due to someone passing. That's just sick. It sends a message that someone died, so there's something wrong with you. It's just wrong on so many levels. But I know of it happening, and it makes me really sad. The other thing out there too with grief that I ran into after the sessions, I had an amazing lady through hospice who was working with me. And when that ended, they gave me a list of like 30 places to go find, someone else to talk to. And I called every single number on that list. And the first response I got was, so you need a medication, right? There is no, in the medical realm with grief, like this was 30 phone numbers that I called. And every person on the line just said, well, you want a medication, right? And I'm like, no, I just want to talk to someone. Well, no, you need a medication. I'm like, no, I want to talk to someone. They don't get it. So be the difference for these people, because understand, in the medical realm, medications are being shoved at them left and right. Like, somebody died, so there's something wrong with you. Well, of course there's something wrong with you. You'll commonly hear, I have people who've studied grief, and they're coming to me. One of my friends, she has a mental health degree, and when her husband passed away about a year ago, one day she looked at me and she said, I know you've been through this, but she said, and I know that I know more than you because I have a degree in this. But she said, I know all this stuff. I have a degree. Why can't I do this? Why can't I handle this? Why do I feel this way? Because all of her learning was book learning. And all I did was I held her, I gave her a big hug, and I said, welcome to the experiential side. Welcome to the experiential side. Feel it. Let yourself feel it. No book is ever going to teach you this.
Jessica?
Yeah.
Can you take a question from Jen?
Yes.
Oh, that was okay. I was like, you kind of moved past it. So I have a friend who's now who took the drugs because their son committed suicide, and that was almost 2 years ago. And now he's got layered, because now he's trying to get off the drugs. Now he's addicted to the drugs, and then he's put on weight, and it's just one thing after the other. And when I see him, even now, he drops some stuff off, some fish off to us, and he'll say the number of days. So he's still counting the days almost 2 years later from it. And it's really heartbreaking to see. But the drug thing is they both were given drugs right away to level them out. And then his wife came off them, and she's in healthcare, so she knows. So anyway, that could be really hard to do also.
Yes, it can be. One other thing I want to say too is, don't be so it's all, I have so much written out in here. I want you guys to understand a lot of the things people with grief responses come in with are going to seem like schizophrenic responses. And by all means, they might be, because they're malnourished and underhydrated. But understand a lot of these same things, we can make them experience in hypnosis. It's called positive or negative hallucinations. Same things. They happen in grief all the time. It's very common, and nobody gives them places to talk about it. So like feeling a hug from a loved one, hearing their voice, hearing their vehicle and the door open and all this stuff. Even animals will respond after someone has passed in that same way. So understand that in the context of grief, it's normal to have negative or positive hallucinations. And I have a lot more of it written out in my little handout for you guys. You know, I guess the main thing is just don't be afraid to work with grief. You're already doing it on some level. And people can come out of it. I wouldn't work directly with a family member if you can help it, because you're just too close to the situation. But give them a safe place to feel it, find a way to make it work. And for me to close my loop that I opened with the penguins, 4.5 years ago, working on 5, I got married to my second husband, and the pastor who married us in a very small ceremony, he was used to be a penguin mascot. So believe it or not, sorry, I don't do PowerPoints, but in my wedding picture, there's a penguin with my new husband and I. So that's why I had to put the penguins in at the beginning, because life changes, life goes on. Yes, Art.
I just wanted to tell you that every word you're saying is golden to me, because I just got a new client who lost his wife after 40 years of marriage. And I've never had that kind of client before. And so you've just been absolutely, I think that's the reason that I had the opportunity to get to this conference, was to hear every word you're saying. So thank you so much. It just absolutely perfect. Really, really timely. Yeah.
Well, if you have more questions, please reach out. And I said, Patty will get you my handout. Otherwise, I'll get it to you directly. But there's so much, and don't be afraid to work with it. There's a statistic as well. It's in a book for people that have been divorced, but they say it takes like 2 to 3 months for every year of marriage or togetherness for your body to unwind from those memories. So with your client, or who's been, 40 years, lost their spouse, or 30, just consider like 2 to 3 years for every year of marriage to let them unwind those emotions, those memories. It takes time. It took me 7 years and I was only married 1.5 years the first time, but it took me 7 years to unwind all of that. So yeah, it's a process, but it can be a beautiful process. And in the end, honestly, sometimes you're the most blessed. Sometimes I've had loved one, or like when I've worked with someone who's passed, I worked with a military mom who lost their son. And after that session, in the parking lot next to my vehicle was one of those toy soldiers. And she doesn't know what I drive, but it was a plastic toy soldier sitting by my car. I've had pennies, I've had little toys. They just show up. And I think it's the person on the other side saying, thank you for helping my loved one. Thank you for helping them move on.
Well, my first marriage in 26 years ended in divorce. My filing for the divorce, and I lost 50 pounds. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't hear any kind of music without bursting into tears. And it did take about 5 years for me to get through that. And I didn't know any of this at the time, so I've lived it, but I didn't realize it until you were talking about it, what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, this is so beautiful. We could go another half hour, and I don't mind if you go a little over, because we can, if we start just Jackie a little bit later and take the break later, because I know there's another question from Carol. Just so you know, I can give up my quickie. Since you all got to hear me yesterday, I'm supposed to do a quickie, so I can let Jacqueline take that time. So you both can have maybe 5 minutes extra. If you want to go another minute and take a question from Carol.
I don't really have a question. I just like Art. preparing for this long week that I'm about to engage in, beginning with the conference here at the Drury. I got 3 people contacted me to want to come and see me, and one of them was something an issue that I've never had the request for, and it was well, not never, but in a long time since I felt capable of dealing with it. But this is perfect. She lost her best friend of 23 years. She died, and she said she's just now realizing that how devastated she is. And she says it's to the point where she's almost dysfunctional in her life. So that was just right before I came. I actually told her that I would have to see her after I came back from after my week-long thing here, after this conference and the week-long thing. So it's like I'm not going to be back till the 20th. And so I postponed her. And how perfect your talk. It was like, oh my gosh, this is kismet. This whole, the HEA conference has always been magical, always had a thread, and always there's gems of information that you get, and something that's just perfect for the situation. So thank you.
Absolutely. I agree. And again, Jessica, this has been fascinating. I've gone to some other seminars on these kinds of things, and so helpful. I mean, you packed a lot into that too. Lots of ideas, lots of beautiful things. And one thing I would sometime when we have time like to talk to you about is that you won't work with people within 2 years. I want to hear a little bit more about that, because those people need help too. And there's maybe other approaches or something that you would
use different approaches, definitely, because like I said, you have to go through the normal grieving process. There's a certain window for that, and we don't want to do that, but we can support it by all means. There's ways to, I do want to back up really quick. I gave you guys the wrong one for the brain info. It's actually by Mary Frances O'Connor, and there's a book called The Grieving Brain, and that's the one that I have the link to the video talk that she did. It's about an hour long, but it's Mary Frances O'Connor is her name, The Grieving Brain. I realized I gave you guys the wrong reference for that one.
So it's the grieving brain. It's not the brain in grief. That's what I had written down. The grieving brain. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Jessica, it will be in the handout we'll get, right?
Yes, it's in your handout.
Yeah.
But like I say, if you want the link to the video, I'll send you the link. And then the info about how many, like the 2 years for every year, or the 2 months for every year of togetherness to unwind and unpack from that. That's in the book called Fishing by Moonlight. I don't have the author in front of me, but the book is called Fishing by Moonlight. There's that statistic in there. It's a really good book. It's more geared toward divorce, but it really crosses over into the grief realm really well, as far as the unpacking physically, emotionally, things we need to do. So, but yeah, like I said, I could talk, for a couple hours on this. I have more. For me, I found that people benefit from hearing my experience. So I have a lot more that I talk about, the processes that were used on me and that we kind of did together. I was facilitated with another hypnotist. He had no idea. He's like, I don't know if I can even help you, but I'm going to try.
Very nice.
Yeah. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely phenomenal. We can you can hang out here after this, but we're going to take the break now.